Hey everybody, Mike with Games Play Badly, and today on Session 0 I talk with Brendan from Night Vision Creative. He's here to talk about his new supplement that he's created, and it's actually kickstarting right now, regarding a class that he's deemed the Summoner. It sounds awesome. You'll hear all about it. The name of the module itself, I can't say on camera because I had like 9 takes and I can't get it right. It's Creed's Codex. You'll see it. It's right here. Right there. That's what it is. So Brendan was amazing. He has such a creative mind, and the Summoner class is something that I can't wait to try out personally. He started with a very small goal and all of a sudden has ballooned into this huge project, which we're going to talk about today. Also, as usual, I have my Gem Firefly shirt on. This is from the Dungeon Glitch collection. Love the shirts. Have tons of them. Gonna buy more. If you want one of these shirts, go up to gemfirefly.com and put in Badly15, Badly 15 at checkout for 15% off your order. Can't wait for you to meet Brendan. That interview starts now. Hey Brendan, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Mike?
Very good. Thanks for coming on. I am super excited about your Kickstarter that's running right now. And it's a class that I think has been needed for a long time, and you created it.
Yeah, we totally agree. We ended up going down this path because it was something we wanted to play, and just with the rules, we couldn't quite make it work. And then it ended up becoming a full-blown project, building out this class, and here we are. Now we're ready with the summoner and bringing that to everyone's table soon.
Yeah, it's Kickstarter is going right now. It's doing well, and I know this has been a passion of yours for a while. Why don't you tell? So it's a coda, and it started as something very small, but it's evolved into something completely different.
Yeah, yeah. It started as just the summoner class. The initial
Mm-hmm.
concept was we'd build out something. Well, the initial concept was let's just make something we want to play. And then as we were working on it, it's like, this we're onto something here. Let's go ahead and expand upon this. And as we were building out a full-fledged class with subclasses, we ended up having some ideas on, oh, these would be some excellent
Mm-hmm.
spells to add to the repertoire, or some things that had been homebrewed previously for other games. And it's like, it would be fun to include some of these. And we got to the point where it's like, okay, we could just build out a full book here. So here we are. We've got the summoner, we've got spells, we've got a few weapons in there, we've got a handful of feats. And as we unlock more stretch goals, we're getting ideas from the community to add some of their creations as well. It's been an awesome process.
So the actual module is called Creed's Codex, Arcane Secrets of the Summoner, or the Summoners, I should say. And you, I find that there's a unique mechanic in there where you can kind of stretch yourself to do amazing things, but at dire peril to yourself and your potential party.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the mechanics we decided to play with was this concept of like pushing yourself further than you can normally go, and potentially having some ramifications come from that. So the guaranteed ramification is that you gain a level of exhaustion.
Mhm.
It's a resource that players in theory should have access to, so let's give them a way to use it. The cost though could be it could be amplified substantially, or there could actually be benefits with that. And
Mhm.
the idea behind it is the better able you are to kind of align yourself for whatever task you're trying to accomplish, and use the kind of inherent magical energy all around us, the better you're able to accomplish that. So if you
Mhm.
roll really well, you may have a positive benefit in addition to whatever you were trying to do. So an example could be something where all of a sudden you're able to give someone you can see an additional hit point, which
Mhm.
could bring someone back up who's unconscious, or just top someone up. And it's kind of minor, but something that's guaranteed to be useful. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum where you just opened a portal accidentally and you don't know where it goes or what's going to be coming through it, and you have no way to
Right.
close it. And
Well,
so, and then
yeah.
there's stuff kind of in between. One of my favorite ones that we actually ran into during a playtest session was where you throw your nearest ally at the furthest enemy you can see within 150 feet. And so they take damage from traveling that distance. And then the
Wow.
enemy they hit also takes damage. And it could be amazing if you happen to grab your barbarian, chucked him raging at the wizard.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, close the gap, good to go.
Sure. Sure.
It also could be that you chucked your wizard at the barbarian.
Eh,
Now things are not so hot. So
No, absolutely, and that's what I love. It's a random table that you're rolling on. So not only are you gaining a level of exhaustion, which exhaustion in 5e is not really something that's used, much like encumbrance. I don't think a lot of people there are mechanics that people just don't use because they're
yeah,
fiddly and crunchy. But there is a table that you're rolling on to see how awesomely awesome or how awesomely not awesome you are. And that's the fun. I love tables. I like the when we were talking before that we both started playing during the AD&D era, or we started playing AD&D back in those days. And one of the things I loved was the critical hits and failures table that was originally part of the Dragon magazine. And I just love that randomness. So I mean, I love that you've included that.
yeah. I mean, we're big fans of just the random chaos, and ended up developing a whole subclass devoted towards that point of convergence, where the convergent subclass for the summoner is all about exploring that sort of magical energy and what they can tap into, trying to really elevate something like a wild magic table to new heights, and really dig in there. So it's been adding a lot of flavor and excitement to the games, where it just things that you know could happen, where you've got 25% of these things being really terrible, 25% being good, and 50% kind of like, yeah, it kind of depends on the situation, like really adds a lot of character to the encounter.
I'm just playing the idea of chucking a wizard at your farthest enemy. I think that'd be
Yeah.
hysterical. I
Yeah,
would
I mean,
laugh.
we in that particular game, we had I was doing play testing, so I had all three of the characters actually playing summoners, one of each of the subclasses.
Hmm.
And so one of the characters just summoned their summons over on the enemies and accidentally chucked one of the other summoners straight into the mix. So it was just like couldn't have gone better. It was amazing. It was a
Uh,
one-shot kill on the enemy too.
oh
Just a
wow.
human body flying.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. You know, again, it's one of those things where you never know in the community what people are going to create that's just going to resonate with you. And obviously this is resonating with people. It resonates with me. I think it would be wholeheartedly the most fun to play just because of the unexpectedness of it.
Yeah, and it gave people a way to feel like they could be extremely powerful too, with
Hmm.
getting that extra point, but it's very limited because in theory, if you took 2 or 3 short rests in a day, you could use it 3 times, but you're only going to get half of those refreshed on your long rest, and you're kind of trying to balance that resource. And I feel like that's
Sure.
a lot of D&D comes down to, is trying to figure out with the tools that you've got available, how do you overcome those obstacles, and in some cases in like the worst or best possible way.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest balance is when you're looking at creating some of these classes, obviously you want them to be badasses. You know, you want them to have that capability, but also you have to temper it with some sort of consequence, right?
Yeah, and one thing that we did, which I actually have up on my website, I'll send you a link to it, is I built this monster designer tool,
Hmm.
and I use the Dungeon Master rules to build your own creature and calculate the CR. And so you can easily just plug in whatever creature you want to, and it'll tell you like what difficulty this should be. Obviously, this is just kind of a guideline depending on your particular party that they're going to encounter. But
Hmm.
I use this then to help balance and say like, okay, if I built the summoner out and tried to maximize his potential here, how does he rank compared to say a fighter of equivalent level
Hmm.
running through, or it's a little harder with the spellcasters because there's so many options there, but same thing,
Sure.
just kind of run through a few different areas to see like how do they stack up. And that's part of what I think has made this class feel in the playtesting sessions very on point with the benchmarking of the other classes, because it may seem a little strong on paper with the idea of being able to summon these creatures, but when you get into the play, it's like, okay, this fits. Like I'm not doing as much damage as that fighter with great weapon master, and you start seeing how some of these pieces play out. So it's been a fun tool.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have links down below to it so that way other people can check it out. That's a fun part though. It's is you create a subclass, but you also create it for a play style. So
Hmm.
while it may not necessarily be equivalent here, it's theater of the mind and play style wise, it's going to fit so many different people's from the standpoint of the way this is created. It's all about your personal play style. So you may not necessarily be the strongest in certain situations as with all classes, but if people like that aspect of summoning, like we were talking about Diablo and the necromancer class and being able to kind
Hmm.
of have all these minions around you, that's really kind of what inspired you to do this, right?
Yeah, yeah. I ended up going a couple different routes here, where on the one hand, like it's really cool to have this idea where there's a horde of orcs approaching, and it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna pull up my army to hold them off while we escape, or take out this critical position, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Like that's always been just this awesome sort of visual. And then on the other end of it, it's like, what if I had this like hulking monstrosity that like maybe I can even like riding on its shoulder, it's just so big, and this is my creature and it walks around, and trying to be able to provide this sort of experience for anyone who wants anything in between there, and allow them to either have a companion that is mindless, where they're just bringing something in to do what they need to, or maybe it's something that grows with them and they have the RP components where they can kind of have the disagreements, interactions, whatever they want with their creature as they sort of level up and gain experience.
I love that. I love that. The RP aspect of it, because I'm kind of a more RP DM, but that them kind of growing with their creature and having that kind of history and being able to write around that, I think would be fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, and the way that we've tried to design the mechanics, you can easily RP it, and we've even put in like some sidebars with suggestions here to kind of help get that lubrication going, so you can get an idea on what you may or may not want to do for your creature, but or how much the table you want to involve in the RP for your creature. But really having a mechanic that you could have this companion, and then if you wanted, like even if you want them to change shape, it could be the same like spirit, if you will, that keeps
Hmm.
inhabiting all of these, or it could be each one is a completely different one that you've collected, or you could go so many different routes here. It's just been a very awesome way to provide extra character to any table.
Sure. Now, we were talking earlier about the content creation process. How long have you been working on this?
I mean, the initial idea for some of these things is like years ago, over a decade for a couple of them. The Summoner itself has always been a class that I was really interested in trying to make since I
Hmm.
started playing 5th edition, but seriously started working on it around February, March of last year. So it's been a
Okay.
little over a year at this point.
Yeah, that's a ton of work. It's just content creation is I'm in awe of it. I mean, as a DM, I'm obviously creating my own content for my players, but somebody who can actually put it into a book and have it organized always amazes me because I know what my DM notes look like, and they don't look anything like content that I would buy.
Yeah. Yeah, getting the illustrators and stuff on board was a journey of its own, and formatting and everything else. It's like a lot of new skills picked up during this adventure.
That's awesome. I love when people are learning this stuff because it's a passion. Much like this channel, this was built out of something I want to do, and so I've had to learn video editing and videography and lighting and all
Hmm.
this other stuff. So I love when people go outside of their comfort zone to try and create something. So I'm super happy about that. Now this is over 100+ page book at this point, and
Yeah.
I think it's gonna, with the stretch goals that keep on popping up, and maybe bigger than that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had estimated with the stretch goals that we would be breaking around 115 pages, but based on everyone's interest, we may go past that. I think going to end up defining what goes into this is if we can still hit our timeline. I don't want to try to add too much and then we end up not being able to deliver on time. So we will kind of keep that in check with the idea that anything that we don't get into this one, we'll just have to put into the next one.
And there will be a next one, I can guarantee it. If
Yeah,
people
we
like this, they're gonna love the next thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I actually had several people ask me if we were going to have like a Synesthist sort of class where you can combine with your summon,
Oh.
and I said no, unfortunately, because we had to pull this out. We originally had it as part of the base class,
Mhm.
and the players really liked it, but did not like the combination. And so we ended up deciding like let's make this own its own full class. And so we did.
Sure.
We pulled it out, and that one hasn't gone through nearly as much testing at this point. So that'll probably be our next Kickstarter we launch. But I did build out the page for it, and I have some artwork for it already, and it's up on Kickstarter in the promotion area. I can send you a link for that as well.
Very,
So we
yeah,
have
very
that.
good. Yeah, I'll have all
Yeah.
the links to everything down below, so
Yeah,
that way
it
everyone
was
can
just
find
so
it.
funny that people had the same idea where it's like, oh, I'd love to play this, and it's like I wanted to play it too. I just could not get it to work in here and give it the true justice it deserved. And so it's like it'll have to be in the next one, and that's how a lot of these pieces have ended up falling. Where it's like this is a really cool idea, let's put it on the to-do list and stick it into this next one.
Yeah, you can't do everything in one book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, from the standpoint of the artwork that's been involved, I mean, I love artists. Fantasy artists for me are like the greatest thing ever. How did you find the appropriate artist? I mean, is it one or is it multiple or?
I've got a lot of them, and I found them all kinds of different ways. Some were suggested to me. I found a few through Twitter,
Mhm.
and I found some through ArtStation, and then I found a couple through Kickstarter itself, where I was looking at other projects where I really liked their artwork.
Mhm.
In some of them, just in like the board game space in general, or games, or like graphic novels, wherever they may have been, and kind of compiled a list of a bunch of them, and then effectively cold called all of them to see like, are you interested in working on this sort of project? And
Sure.
I had some really awesome people that answered the call and have jumped on board and been making amazing stuff. To me, this is one of the coolest parts of this project, is the idea of being able to help bring this stuff to life, because it's so awesome to see someone's visual representation of like that thought you have in your mind. Like,
Yeah.
and often it's like, it's so much cooler than what I had tried to describe. Like,
Right.
it is a blast.
That's the sign of an amazing artist too. I mean,
Yeah.
I love when, I've talked to people throughout the years about game creation and things like that, and you have that document with just the text in it, and that's all well and fine, but until that artwork is laid down, that really brings everything together.
Yeah, and one of the things that I had decided upon early was, we have a lot of control over our artwork. So we can set the bar that everything must be at least as good as Wizards of the Coast or better.
Mm.
And that was kind of our guiding principle of like, let's make our artwork really pop and have
Hmm.
this help, whether people want to end up using it in their games for things, or backgrounds, or wallpapers, whatever you want. Like, we are here to bring some of these awesome creations so that you can enjoy them.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing it in print. There's going to be there's a digital copy available, and then you can actually get the printed book, which is the direction I would go, just because I like to be able to thumb through a book and be able to point something out and say, "Hey, look at this! This is amazing." So once the Kickstarter is, what's your timeline for release?
So once the Kickstarter wraps up, we will be at that point trying to finish compiling all of the stretch goals and other information that we've collected from everyone, with their awesome ideas. And some people have created really detailed notes on things they'd like to see that are really good ideas, and we will
Hmm.
see what we can fit into this book,
Hmm.
or what we want to tweak that's already there. And we will start doing play testing pretty shortly thereafter. We have probably 2 to 3 months worth of playtesting we'll want to run,
Hmm.
depending on how that goes. And we just want to make sure that the quality's there, especially for all the new stuff developed during the campaign. Obviously, none of that will have been playtested except for like very basically internally here. So get through that piece, and then compile all that information, final formatting, any additional artwork we've unlocked, we'll have
Hmm.
to make sure we get all those completed in
Sure.
time. And that we're shooting for finishing all that stuff by, I believe, October. And then get those drafts over to Drive Through RPG, who will be doing our printing for us.
Okay.
And that's about a 12-week process to get everything kind of wrapped up and ready to print. So the goal here is you be able to get onto their site in December and get that book.
Makes a perfect Christmas gift.
Yes.
Everyone
Yes.
who's watching, if you have a summoner in your life, Christmas time, this is going to drop. It's a perfect gift. So that's fantastic. Now, Brendan, I do something with my guests, which I call the lightning round, or I've called it all sorts of different things. But there's some very hard hitting questions that I ask that I need for you to answer for me on camera.
Sure.
Are you ready?
I don't know.
Okay. Cake or pie?
Ooh, cake.
What's your favorite cake?
Probably some sort of like German chocolate cake.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not. I could go with a pie potentially, but I'm not a huge fan of like the like fruit pies. Typically, what a pie is.
I get that. Have you ever had a chess pie before?
Chess pie. I have
Mm-hmm.
not. I don't know what that is.
Chess pie is something my sister made for me. I love it. And I mentioned it in other interviews, but it's basically a pecan pie without the pecans. So
Oh,
it's
interesting.
that filling, it's
Yeah,
just, it's
like
all
the like.
sugar. And being a diabetic, I can't have it, but I'll have a little bite every once in a while, but it's so delicious. It's
Yeah, that
wonderful.
sounds awesome. Yeah, yeah. Because a pecan pie like that direction, I could be interested, but it's hard to beat a German chocolate cake.
I would, I agree with you on that as well. Do you like your pie with, or do you like your cake with ice cream?
Sure. I
Little a la mode?
Yeah, why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. You're a man of my own heart. Spring or fall?
I would have to go with fall, and this is probably highly dependent on where you live, because
Sure.
we usually, I grew up in San Diego, and we would have a warm summer go through like mid-October, sometimes early November. So you'd still have a lot of outdoor activity stuff you could do.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand the summoner class is your ideal class. It's what you love, but outside of the summoner, what's your favorite class to play in D&D?
That's so tough. I usually come up with some sort of concept, and then it's like, all right, who am I going to try to do this with? And so,
I'm going to
um,
shoehorn something into this class.
yeah, I think my favorite one that I have built so far was I had this idea where I wanted to be someone that was extremely obnoxious for enemies, but I primarily damaged them by getting hit. And
Oh.
so I went barbarian for level 1, and then the rest I started going into warlock with the idea that I would pick up armor of Agathis, so I could drop that on me,
Sure.
rage, run into battle, and then just provoke opportunity attacks and have them take a bunch of damage and me only taking half of it.
That's absolutely despicable. I love it.
Yeah, it was pretty fun because I would just like charge past all the melee guys to the wizard, who then I would just try to grapple.
Oh,
Um,
that's so smart.
and so the melee would be getting damage from using their reactions, and then everyone else is free to move around without worrying about getting a hit.
Yeah, and you're
So
getting to the wizard or the healer without
yeah,
too much effort. Yeah, yeah, I
yeah,
get
trying to
that.
get to that squishy line, and then
Very,
yeah, so that was a really fun build.
very smart. You were built for this, no pun intended. Or pun
Yeah,
intended. I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, I think to me, like the character crafting has always been a huge part of the draw for me. I
Hmm.
remember in high school where it's just like, all right, let me think about ways that I could, like, I love this spell. How could we build around this where the whole character concept just utilizes this one spell? Or I want to build the fastest character possible. What do I need to do? Or whatever it may be. There's always just an interest, and one of those interests has always been like, I want to summon things, but I really don't like the options.
Yeah.
And so
Well, I mean, kudos to you. You've fixed that problem.
yeah, yeah, I'm very excited. I've been playing this in a variety of games as well, and it's been an absolute blast doing the play testing for it too.
So, do you play board games?
I do. Yeah,
Uh,
I not nearly as much. I actually don't play very much of anything now that I've been working on this. It's consumed all my time. But once I'm done with it, I'd love to get back to playing. But I have played most recently. I did finish Gloomhaven, which I really
oh,
enjoyed. It's a
yeah,
good one.
yeah.
Um,
My niece and her husband are playing Gloomhaven, and I don't know how far they just had a baby, so I'm not sure how far they've gotten.
okay.
But yeah, that's it. So, if you had your favorite tabletop board game, what would you say that would be out of all the ones you played?
I'd probably have to go with something like Pandemic.
Oh, that's so funny. My husband hates that.
Oh,
He
really?
absolutely well, the problem is, yeah, I mean, if you actually look at the statistics, you only win 20% of the time, if that. I mean, it's a very difficult game without expansions or anything. It can be a
Hmm.
very difficult game to win, and it's the game beats him every time, and he can't stand it.
Yeah, I think like I love the cooperative games, which is part of what I love about D&D. It's like everyone's working together to solve something, and Pandemic really does a good job with having those moments where it goes from like ah crap to like oh shit, and it's
Yeah,
like it just keeps getting worse,
yeah,
and
yeah.
everyone is struggling together in this, and because it's cooperative, it doesn't matter if someone hasn't played before, where you can easily bring them in and they can learn as you go. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
and to me that's the challenge with a lot of the board games that I end up kind of gravitating towards, is they're too complicated for someone who doesn't know how to play them to introduce them. So
Yeah,
I think Pandemic kind of fills that role where it's the cooperative, the instructions are simple enough
right.
that you can pick it up pretty quickly. But I did like Arkham Horror as well. That was always a fun one. I just picked up Zombicide 2, I think it was, when that came out on Kickstarter. So I've had that
Hmm.
for a while. We've played a few rounds. That's been good stuff. And the miniatures are awesome. So that's always a benefit. But yeah, what about yourself?
I have a whole bunch of games, but I would say from the standpoint of what I love about board games is introducing people to them.
Mm,
And so to your point, some games are very complicated and the mechanics are tough and people get bored or are just warded off by them. They don't want to deal with them. So
Yeah.
I love Steve Jackson games because they're really easy to play, and I think they're really fun. And I think that there's some, especially with Munchkin and games like that, there's some rules interpretation that can be kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, I love them all. We've been playing the Car Wars card game, like the old one. Like they have a new one that's being released that looks very complex and it's very expensive. But it was the one that I played when I was a kid. So you have your card that represents your car, and you're throwing missiles at each other, and you're just trying to blow each other off the map. So that's a really fun one. And then there's also Slugfest Games make some very, very, I love them. And they have 2 games out. One is called, they have more than 2, but one of them is called Dungeon Decorators.
Okay.
Which is not necessarily resource management, but it's little tokens. You're trying to design a dungeon for the new person who's moving in. So the original big bad evil guy died or left, and so you're basically a real estate agent trying to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's hysterical. And then they have another one called Red Dragon Inn, which I just adore. I think it's just a fantastic game. And if you're a fan of the adult beverage, it makes it even more fun. So I highly suggest, if you get a chance, take a look at those games. They're a lot of fun.
Nice.
Are you a tea or coffee person?
You know, up until recently, I was neither, but I have started drinking tea.
My husband loves tea, and I'm a big coffee person. But some of the tea that he has is just so delicious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they started getting very complicated, because I think when I was first thinking about tea, it was just always like chamomile or something like that.
Sure.
And now you've got things like vanilla honey extract, and it's like, oh, well, that sounds pretty good. So I think the range of teas has expanded, so has my interest.
Yeah, and then you have boba, which is a whole. It's a whole delicious mess. I love boba tea.
My wife is very into boba.
Oh God, so good. Another thing I should not have, but occasionally I do have a boba tea. So when you first started playing, you're playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So when you think back to those times when you were first learning, what is a favorite memory for you?
Oh man, there was this time where I don't remember what exactly we were doing in here, but there was this giant like underground, I almost want to call it like a cathedral of sorts, where it has like big pillars kind of running down it, and you could imagine like it would have like pews kind of thing, except it was empty. Well, it wasn't empty, it was full orcs.
Right.
And so we were in this area, like right at this door, and there were just tons of these orcs streaming towards us and trying to figure out what we were going to do. And everyone's like checking their character sheets, like, what's in my inventory? Like, what could I possibly have to like help? Like right now we're at this kind of choke point, but we can't hold this. We're gonna have to retreat. And a couple of the characters ended up having like some really lucky rolls and some holy water, some fire, and a few other miscellaneous spells and effects that went off like perfectly. And it was just like that series of rolls where everyone's like hanging on the edge of their seat to see what comes up on that die. Then the next one comes up, same thing, and it's like, and we made it. And all theory of mind, of course. Like there was no map or anything like that. And so everyone's picturing this, I'm sure, slightly different. But we all had the same like, God, that was amazing. Adrenaline still pumping after that. It's just like,
absolutely.
Oh, God. Like it was so fun.
You got to love those moments. I think those are the ones that stand out as memories, is when the table is on its feet, just cheering and screaming as crazy stuff is going off, because that's the epitome of what role playing is. So I love it.
To me, it's like the greatest times are often even like the worst failures, like where we're all screwed together and everyone is like, there's a lot of camaraderie that gets built there, and I love that. Yeah,
I play with a group on Wednesdays, and we're all Twitter folks. So I've not met any of them. My husband plays, so obviously I know him. But during one of the very first adventure that we were playing, I played a half-orc barbarian, and she just thought she could do anything she wanted to. And so there was a 10-foot pit, 10 foot across, no big deal. And she grabs this character named Ollie, who was just a little itty-bitty human, and grabs him by the belt and just jumps across with him, rolls a 1, falls in the pit. They both take damage, almost both die. And that was the first roll of the entire adventure. That was the first time I rolled a 20. I rolled a 1 and almost killed us. So
perfect.
Yeah,
off to a good start.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brandon, it was a pleasure to talk to you. I wish you absolutely all the best. I cannot wait. I'm going to be getting this because Summoners is a class I didn't realize I wanted until you mentioned it. Necromancers are cool, but I like all these mechanics, and I can't wait to take a look at the random table that could possibly make me a hero or a zero.
I do have a stretch goal coming up that I haven't posted yet, but that will expand the number of options on that table.
Ooh, I like it. If anybody wants to know more about the game, I'll have all the links down below. You can find the Kickstarter. I'll have information on everything we've talked about in this interview. If you like what you're hearing, by all means, run over and take a look. Again, it releases in December, so therefore it's a great Christmas gift. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your creation with me. I know it's a labor of love for you, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. It's been great.
Absolutely, my pleasure. If anyone wants to know more, links down below. And if you like this video, thumbs up and subscribe.